Hey everyone, this is Christina Kawagtan. So for today's video, we are going to tackle the Module 7, which is entitled Consumer Behavior in the International Context, Psychological and Social Dimensions. So for this chapter, we are going to tackle different topics, which are perspectives on consumer behavior, motivation, learning, personality, and under personality, we are going to tackle personality traits, Hofstede's national cultures, clustering, commonality and diversity, psychographics, perception, and under perception, we are going to tackle formation of perception, country of origin, and perceived product quality. We also have attitude, social class, group, family, opinion leadership, diffusion process of innovations, and as well as the conclusion of the whole chapter. So the purpose of this chapter is for us to know the consumer's perception. Consumer perception is highly subjective, and it is quite unpredictable. When we say highly subjective, it is more on the personal feelings, tastes, and opinions. So we don't know how do the consumers perceive our products and services. So basically, the basic purpose of this chapter is for us to know the different role of the determinants other than culture in influencing the consumer behavior. So in this chapter, it discusses the psychological and social dimensions, which includes the motivation, learning, personality, psychographics, perception, attitude, social class, group, family, opinion leadership, and as well as the diffusion process of innovation. So for the first topic, we are going to tackle the perspectives on consumer behavior. Consumer behavior, it is the study of a human behavior, and it also includes all the steps in the decision-making process. And it also answers or discusses why, where, how a particular purchase occurs. So according to the study, domestically, it employed a variety of techniques and concepts, including the cultural approach to study consumer behavior, while internationally, it employed the cultural approach almost exclusively without much regard for other psychological and social concepts. So in international, they don't usually try to focus on the other aspects other than the culture or the cultural aspects. It is quite risky and quite questionable practice for us to rely into one concept only as a sole determinant of consumer behavior or as the only concept that largely, if not entirely, explains the consumer behavior. We all know that culture undoubtedly affects the psychological and social dimension or social processes and thus affects the consumer behavior. However, too much emphasis into one or single concept only, such as the culture, might not really determine the whole consumer behavior. So, consumer behavior research must include international dimensions. There may be a need to develop an international consumer behavior model so that the studies of consumer behavior in various countries can be more systematic and as well as better coordinated. So there are three major behavioral sciences, and those are psychology, sociology, and as well as the cultural anthropology. Psychology, it is the study of individual and interpersonal behavior. So psychology, it tackles the mind or the behavior of a person, of a single person. So behavior, it has the values, attitudes, experiences, needs, and other psychological phenomena. So when it comes to psychology, purchase, it is the function of the psychological view of the products. So the purchase, it depends on how a consumer perceives a certain product or how a consumer behaves toward a certain services or product that leads them into purchase. So consumer buys a product not only for consumption. It is a perception of how a product can be used to communicate with other people. So there are psychological concepts as well. There are motivation, learning, personality, perception, and as well as the attitude. Next one is the sociology. When we say sociology, it's study of groups and human interactions. So sociology from the word social, socializing, it includes yourself and the other people. So it is not the individual, but rather the group, the entire group. So the importance of sociology is it can exert a significant influence on a person's preferences and consumption behavior. So when we socialize to other people, it helps us in influencing one another on how are we going to perceive a certain product or services. So that we could behave a certain way into the certain product and services. It may be also useful for a marketer to view consumers as a group, like for example, friends and family, because those friends and families have a huge impact and influence to one another. Next one is the cultural anthropology. When we say cultural anthropology, it is the study of a human culture. So the significance of cultural anthropology in the international marketing is they influence consumers' cognitive and personality development. Next topic is motivation. The first one, we have the perspectives on consumer behavior. Now we are going to move on to motivation. Motivation, it is the fundamental in initiating a consumer behavior. Motivation is something that motivates us on how are we going to behave towards a certain product or services. Motivation also may be classified as rational or non-rational. Consumer motives, it is determined by buying habits. How do we buy or how do we behave when it comes to purchasing a certain product or services? So it is considered as consumer motives. So we have two classification of motivation. We have the rational and non-rational motives. So for the first one, rational motives, we have the price, the durability, and as well as the economy in operation. So those are the three things that leads us into rational motives. The next one is non-rational motives. Those were prestige, comfort, and as well as the pleasure. So those three are the determinants on how do we buy a product in a non-rational way. So basically, rational motives is the one that you use your mind, which includes the logical reasoning, logical thinking, and as well as your analogy or analyzation skills. While in non-rational motives, this is where you use your feelings or emotions for you to buy a certain product and towards a certain services or products. The problem with the conventional classification of the rational versus the non-rational, or the mind versus the emotions, it is that the consumer may not organize or recognize their emotions or their emotional motives and may have a tendency to rationalize personal behavior by assigning only rational and socially acceptable motives. Just like for example is the convenience. When we say convenience, it may fall into rational and non-rational. When we say rational, of course, convenience, when we say convenience, we buy a certain product for our own convenience. We buy a product or services for our own needs and wants in a convenient way. While in the non-rational, we buy a certain product for our own comfort for our own satisfaction. So it may fall into both classification that may lead us into unorganized thoughts, whether it is rational or non-rational. So what is important for us is to identify the specific motives relevant for marketing purposes. The relevance of a particular motive may vary across the countries. It may vary from different places and across the different countries because we have the different beliefs, we have different societies that we live in, we have different influences from different people that we have in a certain country. So before we end this, I'm giving an example. Example is one study of youths in Hong Kong, Singapore, Canada, and Hawaii compared their beliefs in money, business ethics, Guanxi, and Machiavellian personality. When we say Guanxi, it is the system of social networks and influential relationships which facilitates business and other dealings. While Machiavellian personality, it is the personality trait of a person that is focused on their own interests, that they will manipulate, deceive, and exploit others to achieve their goals. So in this example, we are able to see in different countries, we have different beliefs in our money, the way we handle our money, and as well as the difference in business ethics, difference in the system of social networks and influential relationships, and as well as the personality trait of a person. So we have differences on different aspects on the way we behave or the way a consumer behave towards a certain product or services, or the way they behave in the society that influence one another.
Good day, this is John Christian Peras, and this is my opportunity to discuss to you what is learning process and how a learning process can be important to every marketers. But before that, we have to understand what is learning. Learning is an activity or a process of gaining knowledge or skills by studying, practicing, or experiencing something. Like all habits, it can be learned. In 1942, when the American troops or soldiers arrived in the Great Britain in the World War II, the British were accustomed to drink tea, not coffee. But when the American troops arrived in the Great Britain in 1942, they brought the American taste of coffee. And before long, the British or the Britannians had learned to drink coffee. As future marketers, it is important to us to understand the learning process of a motive, culture, or habit of a community for us to understand and to provide a suitable service or product for them. The way back 1948, Mr. Baskin-Robbins in Vietnam, as the first food franchise in Vietnam, has to teach the Vietnamese about the concept of the fast food. When the ice cream parlor first opened, most of the Vietnamese customers walked and sat down on a table expecting to be waited on. But when they are asked to go to the counter, some of them are failed and insult, because the Vietnamese are accustomed to linger or to stay to the coffee table and not to be paid immediately. And it's because of the culture and the habit of a Vietnamese, and some of them, and naturally some of them, are getting angry and felt that Mr. Robin didn't trust them by paying the ice cream immediately on the counter. As we, the future marketers and the business owners someday, it is important to us to understand the learning process or the culture, the motives, or the habit of a community for us to gain them as a future customers. And it is how important the learning process for every marketers that we should to understand it all. So the next one is personality. So what is personality? Personality derives from the Latin word personal, relating to a person. It is an individual characteristic that makes a person unique. In short, personality, ito yung pagkakilala ng isang tao, where the country belong, who they are, and what kind of person they are. personality has been studied for a long time. It's because it is a subject of interest to the marketers due to the assumption that the product purchase are extension of the customer's personality. Because the personality is an integrated system that holds the attitude, the motivation, and the perception of a person. The next is the personality traits. Personality traits reflects people's characteristic, pattern of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. In Korea, despite of the difficulty, particularly the personality traits, seems the dominant in certain countries, Koreans seems themselves as being driven by the two complement passion that are uniquely theirs. First is Han. Han, it means the bitterness, and Jong, it means devoted love. By these two explains the Korean ability to be at once instantly productive or violence. The Koreans, they see themselves that they have these two passions or the personality traits that they are driven. These two is the Han, the bitterness, and the Jong is the devoted love. And the next one is the hosted national culture. But what is hosted national culture? Hosted national culture, it is a dimension theory framework for a cross-culture communication developed by Mr. Gert Hosted. It shows the effect of the society's culture on the value of its member and how this value related to behavior using this structure derived from the factor analysis. And the hosted national culture has a four large independent dimension. And what is this four large independent dimension of hosted? The first is individualism and collectivism, and the second is power distance, and the third is uncertainty avoidance, and fourth is masculinity and femininity. So ano nga ba itong apat na large independent dimension of the hosted national culture? The first is collectivism and the individualism. So it says the collectivism countries are always show a power distance, and the individualism countries do not show always the power distance. And what is the power distance? Power distance, it describes how the society treat unequal people. Sabihin kung paano nila tinatrato yung mga tao sa on this country, on this community, unequal. It is a power distance. And the next is the uncertainty avoidance. So what is this uncertainty avoidance? It says that some countries have the weak uncertainty avoidance is the stage that they are accepted. It is strong uncertainty avoidance to take the risk. And the fourth is the masculinity and the femininity. And what is the masculinity and the femininity? It says the society clearly differentiate what men can do and what women are supposed to do. It says it's here, pinapaliwanag dito kung ano yung kakayahan ng lalaki at kung ano yung kakayahan ng babae. And those countries that are in lower power distance and masculinity and uncertainty avoidance included Australia, Canada, Denmark, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Norway, New Zealand, Sweden, and USA. In those countries that are in lower in individualism but higher in the power distance and masculinity and uncertainty avoidance, including the Greece, the Mexico, the Pakistan, the Peru, the Philippines, the Taiwan, the Thailand, the Venezuela, and the Japan.
About the consumer behavior international context. Before I start, I would like to inform you what chapter is. It's all about the psychography and social dimension. This includes motivational, learning, personality, psychographic, perception, attitude, social class, group, family, and the diffusion of innovation. So, let's start to my topic. Psychography. Psychography is also known lifestyle or AIO, meaning activities, interests, opinion of the potential customer. It is connecting product offered in the market with targeted lifestyle group. But consumers are not only as about the product they like, where they live, what gender it is, but also about what they do. That is, but also how they spend their time, priority, opinion, value, and the general outlook of the world are. In short, in the consumer's marketing lifestyle, it is considered as a psychological variable to influence the buyer decisions process for the consumer. Next is, what is perception? Perception is also about the selecting, organizing, and to interpret the information. Perception is a process by which individuals organize and interpret their sensory impressions in order to give meaning to their environment. Additionally, perception is about people's behavior based on their perception of what reality is, not reality itself. Next is the perceptual process. It's the influence by the perceivers. That includes the past experience, needs or motives, personality, values, and lastly, the attitude.
Hello everyone, my name is Marvin Morillo, and now I'm going to discuss with you about attitudes and social class in international marketing. Attitudes is the learned tendency to respond to an object in a consistently favorable or unfavorable way. So basically, when we say attitudes, it is a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something. Typically one that is reflected in a person's behavior. It is our evaluation of a person, an idea, or an object. Actually, we have attitudes for many things ranging from products that might pick up in the supermarket around the world. Typically, attitudes are favorable or unfavorable, positive or negative. There are three components of attitudes: cognition, affect, inclination, or behavioral intention. When we say cognition or cognitive component, it is a belief and knowledge. Meaning, when the consumer buy a product, they actually acquiring knowledge and understanding about the product through thoughts, experience, and senses. Second, the affect or affective component. It is a feeling from product we buy. It means how a product has an impact on us and how a product can influence to us. Example, may product akong binili through online. And then, when I received the product, nagandahan ako dun sa product na binili ko. So, there was an effect on me or there was an impact on me of that product. And lastly, inclination or behavioral intention. Actually, it is also known as behavioral component because how the product has an effect of the attitude on behavior of the consumer. It is the mental faculty of purpose, desire, or will to perform an action. As a person becomes older, attitudes become more established. This become a challenge for marketers who want to introduce change. A new product often involves a change in a long-held attitude. Finally, attitude is not innate. It must be learned. One's attitude about an object is formed by one's experience of the object, either directly or indirectly. There is a relationship between consumer attitudes and their purchases. For instance, many Singaporeans are out shoppers who go to Malaysia to buy food. Kasi, minsan, actually, mga Singaporeans talagang mga out shoppers sila. Kasi, mas pipiliin nila yung may talagang mas mura or may mga ample parking space. Talagang dumadayo pa sila sa ibang bansa para mamili lang, mag-grocery or what, kahit ano pa yan. Talagang mas pipiliin nilang mamalengke sa ibang bansa or mamili mag-grocery ng mga beverages or whatever due to competitive prices and ample parking space. In addition, since they engage in out shopping primarily for economic reasons, they do not feel guilty. Example, a lack of national pride or low consumer ethnocentrism. So, another example, sa Pilipinas, tayong mga Pilipino sanay mamalengke or mamili, di ba, ng gamit or whatever, especially sa mga nanay natin. Mahilig sila bumili ng gamit sa bahay. Like for example, cortina. Di ba, mahilig talaga ang mga nanay natin dyan kasi nga paganda dun sa mga bahay natin. So, mas pipiliin talaga nila mamili sa ibang lugar kahit malayo pa ito. Diba, halimbawa ako, kami, taga Laguna, yung nanay ko talagang dumadayo pa sa Baclaran or Binyan para mamili lang ng kortina kasi nga mura. At bukod doon, kahit malayo yun, mas nakakatipid sila alam mo na, sa presyo at marami pa silang nabibili na kortina. Diba? So basically, it is important for a marketer to distinguish between private and public attitudes because unexpressed public attitudes can differ widely from a private attitudes, especially when the private attitudes contradict the society's cultural norms. Social class. It is referred to a group of individuals who occupy a similar position in the economic system of production. It is also called class, which is a group of people within a society who possess the same socioeconomic status. Social class implies inequality. Even in the United States of America, where all are supposed to be equal, some people seem to be much more equal than others. Social class exists because it provides for and ensures the smooth operation of a society. For a society to exist, many functions must be performed, some of which are not very pleasant. In this regard, many societies see nothing wrong with the existence of a social hierarchy. Sa totoo lang, many Asian and Middle East countries view status differences positively. Elders and superiors command respect. Connections with socially acceptable persons are often important in securing business. Actually, social class has a great deal of relevance for marketing strategies. It influences store selection, product selection, media selection, advertising appeal selection, and sales promotion selections. You know, marketer has a marketing plan or marketing research for them their business be more profitable. Like for example, different motives may thus have to be employed for different social classes. You know, Treasure is a British liquor store chain of 1990 outlets. Diba? Meron siyang 1990 outlets na liquor store chain. Dun sa may marketing research sila na ginamit niya after nung result na yon ng marketing research niya, ginamit niya yon na nakalagay na i-divide yung store niya ng 3 designation. So, ano yung 3 designation na yon? Ayun yung drink store, wine shops, and wine racks. So that the designation are based on the social status of a neighborhood. Diba? Napakagaling ni Treasure. The down market drink stores are located in working class areas and they stock mostly beer. Wine racks offering a larger selection of wines and champagnes are found in a wealthier locations and have a better educated staff. While the middle brow wine shops are somewhere in between.
Good day everyone! My name is Jamaica Varon Arellano and today I'll be discussing group and family. So first, let's define group. A group is consist of two or more persons who share a set of norms and have a certain implicitly defined relationship with one another in such a way that their behavior is interdependent. Group of norms influence both general behavior and consumption behavior.
A group now serves its members more for needs of social and psychological satisfaction.
An individual cannot operate well in isolation because all persons are biologically and socially interdependent. An individual needs to belong to a group to interact with those who can provide identification and help to meet needs in a more efficient manner.
The influence of a reference group is derived in part from its capacity to disseminate information. The relevance and strength of influence of a reference group is not constant across product categories. Its influence is determined in part by the confictiousness of the product in question.
A product can be conspicuous in two ways. First is by having the qualities of visibility, and second is by standing out. The more the product is visible and stands out, the more conspicuous it becomes.
Product confictiousness allows a reference group to operate in exerting its influence on consumer behavior. For example, Philip Morris Galaxy brand was perceived at one time as a diet cigarette, and for that reason, Brazilians became ashamed to be seen with it, because social and personal pressures were placed on those who smoke Galaxy. Let's define family.
What is family? A family is a group of two or more people related in birth, marriage, ancestry, adaptation, and residing together. A family can be vertically extended when it includes several generations. It can also be horizontally extended when such a family members as uncles, aunts, cousins are included.
In the USA, the word family has a narrow meaning because it encompasses only the husband, wife, and their offspring, if any. This family is known as a nuclear or conjugal family. In other parts of the world, the word has much broader meaning because it is based on the concept of an extended or consanguine family. The Chinese culture emphasizes familial over private self. Attainment of family-oriented goals is a measure of self-realization and self-fulfillment.
The boundaries of a familial self may include romantic partners and close friends who are more likely to be our family.
As a subset and special kind of reference group, the family can be distinguished by its characteristics. First, a family allows its members ample opportunity to interact with one another on a face-to-face basis. In effect, each member operates as both a counselor and an information provider. Second, the family is a consuming unit in the sense that most members share the consumption of many products, especially those that are durables or that affect family budget. Third, individual needs are usually subordinated to family needs. Finally, one member is often assigned the primary duty of buying products for other users, thus acting as a gatekeeper or purchasing agent. A study of two cultures, the USA and China, found that emphasis on joint, husband-dominated, and wife-dominated decisions varied by stage of the decision process as well as by the stage culture interaction. Compared with the US sample, the Chinese sample exhibited lower levels of egalitarianism, more husband-dominated decisions, and fewer joint decisions. family functions more efficiently when its members specialize in the roles that they are most comfortable with or are capable of performing better than other family members.
Good day everyone, my name is Kate Nicole Tolentino and I'm going to discuss about opinion leadership. Opinion leadership is defined in which one person influences the attitudes or actions of other persons informally. They offer informal advice of product or services. Opinion leaders is part of a social group. They have social communication network. The communication is informal and interpersonal, which happens between those who are not associated with the commercial selling source directly. Next, we're going to discuss the diffusion innovation. Diffusion innovation is a process in which new products is adopted by their intended audiences. It allows designers and marketers to examine why it is some inferior products are successful when superior products are not.
Here are some stages of the decision innovation process. The first step is the diffusion of innovation is knowledge. This is the point at which the would-be adopter is first exposed to the innovation itself. They do not have enough information to make a decision to purchase on and have not yet been sufficiently inspired to find out more. At this stage, marketers will be looking to increase awareness of the product and provide enough education that the prospect adopter moves to the second stage. Persuasion is the point at which the prospective adopter is open to the idea of purchase. They are actively seeking information which will inform their eventual decision. This is the point at which marketers will be seeking to convey the benefits of the product in detail. There will be a conscious effort to sell the product to someone at this stage of the diffusion of innovation. Eventually, the would-be adopter must make a decision. They will weigh up the pros and cons of adoption and either accept the innovation or reject it. It is worth noting that this is the most opaque part of the process. Rogers cites this as the most difficult phase on which the intelligence. This is, at least in part, due to the fact that the people do not make rational decisions in many instances. They make a decision based on their underlying perception and feelings, and following the decision, they attempt to rationalize that decision. Thus, obtaining an understanding of the decision-making process is challenging. The reasons given following a decision are not likely to be representative of the actual reasons that a decision was made. Once a decision to adopt a product has been made, the product will, in most cases, be used by the purchaser. This stage is when the adopter makes a decision as to whether or not the product is actually useful to them. They may also seek out further information to either support the use of the product or to better understand the product in context. This phase is interesting because it suggests that designers and marketers alike need to consider the ownership process in detail. This is the point at which the user evaluates their decision and decides whether they will keep using the product or abandon use of the product. This phase can only be ended by abandonment of a product, otherwise it is continual. For example,
You may buy a new car today. You are highly likely to keep using the car for a number of years. Eventually, however, you will probably sell the car and buy a new one. This phase will normally involve a personal examination of the product and also a social one.
So hello, good morning Ma'am Velasco and classmate. Let me just introduce myself first before I conclude our topic. So I am Verona Malangis from MM32, the concluder of the group. So the sum up of the consumer behavior in the international context, the consumer behavior has been researched extensively in the USA at both macro and micro levels. It includes the characteristic and behavior to the cultural differences in terms of psychological and social concepts. It requires a study of psychological concepts which is relevant, such as motivations, learning, personality, psychographics, perceptions, and attitudes. Because as the previous reporter said, that the consumer needs vary across to the countries due to their individual personality traits and their different lifestyles. While in the social concepts, it is the redundant state that the consumer behavior is affected by the cultural environment, such as cultural norms, which are shaped by reference groups, social class, family, leadership opinion, and the diffusion process of innovation. So this goal requires the researchers to be more specific and rigorous in their investigation, extending the application of relevant psychological and social concepts in the international scene. So now, let me just discuss and give an example of the related topic, consumer behavior in the international context, which is the beneath jihad in the marketing to the veiled woman in Iran. It is from Jeffrey A. Fadiman in San Jose State University. Jihad means the modest dress. It is a head covering worn in public by some of the Muslim women. Muslim women often wonder why Western women wear skimpy skirt, skin-tight dresses that are impractical and uncomfortable. They also ask that why they have to be slave to appearance, always listening to the media to be glamorous. Why they have to be look beautiful for strangers to ogle them in public places. Why Western women wants to turn into men. Muslim women wonder why gender is a sign of strength or actually sign of weakness. On the other hand, also Western women annoyingly asking why in defense of the practice. So that using magazine Majuba, the magazine for Muslims that is written in the English language for the foreign distribution to express the cultural norms of the Muslim women. According to the article, men and women are physically and psychologically different. Muslim women are equal to men, but not the same as men. That only means women wearing a jihad are not weak, but a high status given to them by Allah. As such, jihad is an outer garment. The heart must be modest as well.
Mir nur Gefühle, wenn ich dich enttäusche. Sieh Fotos von dir als Soldat, doch für mich bist du kein Kämpfer. Du bist der Grund für Mamas Schmerzen und die Tränen meiner Schwester. Hättest bleiben müssen, auch in deiner Ehre befleckt war. Du hast mit deiner einen Entscheidung 3 Leben verändert. Sag mir wieso, ich brauch ein Warum.
So jihad is a great example of cultural norms which is under the consumer behavior. That only means to say that the marketer and researchers should guard against using a cultural as a catch-all term and shouldn't use it on a wholesale basis to explain overseas behavior. So that's all for our report. And again, I am Verona Malangis of MM32 of Group 7. Thank you.
So no, I don't want your number, no. I don't wanna give you mine, and no, I don't wanna meet you nowhere, no.